And time for our first major conversation right here on the breakfast. A national political pressure group, the Elites for Good Governance, has called for the cancellation of the presidential and national assembly elections over alleged discrepancies recorded during last Saturday's exercise across the country. Now, what they're saying is that the elections were fraught with lots of manipulations by political actors, including the officials of the Independent National Electoral Commission in the country. Now, also in Bayelsa State, the Social Democratic Party's candidate contesting to represent Ogbia Federal Constituency in the House of Representatives, Daniel Iworiso Maxon, demanded a fresh election. Iworiso Maxon, at a press conference in Yenagoa on Tuesday, said the voting process was characterized with massive irregularities and described the exercise as a charade. Similarly, the People's Democratic Party candidate in Abia North, MAO Ohwambuwa, called for the cancellation of the polls and the results of the polls, and he also called for a fresh election. Addressing reporters in Umuahia on Tuesday, Ohwambuwa said the exercise was marred by irregularities, and according to him, elections did not hold in many wards, with over 100 units amounting to more than 60,000 votes, while plans to have a rerun had been shelved. Now, in Sokoto State, the People's Democratic Party rejected the results, citing alleged disenfranchisement of over 400,000 people. That's a lot of number. Huge number. Now, the party also called on security agencies, especially the Nigeria Police Force in the state, to immediately arrest suspected hoodlums who attacked polling units in the state. Let's move over to Rivers State, where the All Progressives Congress in that state also rejected the National Assembly elections results for the Rivers East Senatorial District, alleging manipulation of figures. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? In Imo State, the people of Oru Federal Constituency, that's Oru East Federal Constituency, protested on Tuesday at the INEC headquarters in Owerri after the APC House of Representatives candidate, Kanis Nwachukwu, was declared winner over the declaration of constituency seat. Now, the placard-bearing protesters contended that no election took place in that constituency owing to insecurity ravaging the area. Lots of complaints in lots of districts, senatorial districts and House of Representatives constituencies, not just for the presidential election, around the country. We have a public affairs journalist, public affairs analyst joining us right now via Zoom from Abuja. Leonard Anyogo is our guest on the first conversation this morning. Leonard, good morning to you. Thank you very much for your time.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
All right, Leonard joins us by phone call. Apologies for that. Leonard, when you hear, all these complaints around the country, is it enough for the Independent National Electoral Commission to cancel the elections in the places where people have grievances and do a fresh one?
Well, we can see that there have been widespread condemnation of the election, how it was conducted. But I'm afraid that the election may not be cancelled because there is no provision in the law that says the election should be cancelled. But the Electoral Act clearly empowers INEC to review election results within 7 days. So that's the only window they can do. If after 7 days they are satisfied that the election that was conducted does not meet the basic requirement, then we can be thinking of fresh election. So the whole thing boils down to INEC. But we also remember that politicians, anytime they lose election, they always give one excuse or the other. That is the truth. But presently, this present election is guided by the new Electoral Act that talks about electronic transmission of results. So in most cases, this was not complied with, and these are allegations that have to be proven in the election tribunal. So basically, what we have is that a large percentage of Nigerians are actually dissatisfied, as shown by the opposition parties that have roundly rejected the result. But the way to go is through the election tribunal. Otherwise, INEC has a duty to also review that result within 7 days. So we are hoping that in the next 7 days they'll come out with their position, whether the election stands or they are going to review some part of that election.
I mean, we would like some clarity as to, the review after the election. Is the review supposed to happen as a result of the confrontation by other political parties or civil society organizations or Nigerians? At what point should this review happen? Can you please bring us up to speed with what the Electoral Act or the law says?
Well, the law provides for review of this election within 7 days. Of course, even during the coalition center, there were protests not by just one political party, but by the main political parties. So, at this point, INEC is mandated to look at the results that were conducted, whether it was substantially in conformity with the provision of the Electoral Act. So, what the old Nigerians are to come out and tell us within 7 days that, look, these are their findings and this is what the outcome.
What I'm trying to understand is it mandatory for this review to happen independent of any external influence? I mean, do you have the political parties involved in this process? Or it's supposed to be an independent review?
Incidentally, the law says INEC that can review the results. Yes, review the outcome of the election. So it's only INEC that can do that. So no other person can come in to review the results apart from the election tribunal. That's what the law says.
No.
So after this round complaint by political parties. So INEC is mandated by law to review that result.
Okay.
Reviewing the result doesn't mean that they will cancel the result. They will look at it. If they found merit, they will they could order for a fresh election. But you all know that somebody who has conducted the election, it's very difficult for the person to review that result and say, look, I didn't do well. So the truth is that I don't think anything will change from my next position, except when these political parties go to the tribunal and the tribunal orders otherwise.
All right. We're hearing calls for cancellation, outright cancellation. But before we go there, looking at the Electoral Act, are we sure we're not putting too much hope and emphasis on this 7-day review? Because if you look at what the law says, we're not even sure if it's meant to be from the what do you call it, from the polling unit phase, or at the, I mean, at what stage, 4 stages of the collation process, like the INEC chairman always has said, at what stage is this review meant to be requested? I mean, has the process not already run its full course right now? Is the tribunal not the next place to go to? Because they've closed down the National Collation Center, they've packed up and they've gone home. They've presented a certificate of return to the president-elect and his vice president-elect.
Well, the president-elect has been presented with the certificate and also the vice president-elect. So just like the law clearly states, the INEC has the power to review the election within 7 days. Otherwise, it's the election tribunal that will be the next item. But basically, the anger by the political parties, the opposition political party, or the political parties that lost, they are alleging that the result from the polling unit was not electronically transmitted, and there was manual transmission. Remember, even our former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, alluded to this allegation too. I call it allegation because it has to be proven in court. Now, what the law on electronic transmission is very clear that results should be transmitted electronically. So the people were believing that, okay, now you can see the result in the INEC portal live streaming because that was the assurance given by INEC. So people were were no longer seeing this result. You know, there's this election monitoring group, Yaga, that clearly stated that what they monitored, the election monitored in Rivers and Igbo State, the results were completely different from what was manually collated. In those two states, Yaga clearly stated that is a Labour Party that won Imo with higher margin and Rivers. So these allegations are very strong enough, and if we don't address this, we don't know what happened next because people, you know, for people to lose confidence in our electoral process. Okay. So, but the right way to go is to go to the tribunal. But beyond the tribunal, we must do something that gives confidence. Like people will say that there have been declaration, there's no nationwide jubilation of the result. It shows the mood of the country. So we have to be very careful on how we manage our electoral processes, not leaving everything to the court. Because most times when you go to court, you do not even, because in court, it's either you are a winner or you're a loser. It does not actually address the issues most times. So it is high time we got this right, that we should have a very transparent election. So that is very key. Not just that, okay, if you are not satisfied, go to court. You must have to learn to do the right thing and make it very transparent. I expect INEC in the next 7 days to come out clearly and explain to Nigerians their position.
All right. Leonard, I want to look at the Electoral Act and look at the relevant sections as highlighted by the political parties. You know, we have the process and procedure quite clear, stated on the Electoral Act, and even the guidelines for the conduct of elections. If you look at the guidelines, it's quite clear that they also give a room for a situation or a scenario where you may not be able to upload the results sheets electronically. You know, they give a room for that something can be done in that instance. So we're sounding like at all costs what do you call it, the result sheet should be uploaded on BVAS. But if you look at the Electoral Act very closely, it shows that there's provision for when you may have any situation where you can't upload it. What should you do? It says you can even take a copy from the party agents, you know, and you can use that. So are we not placing too much emphasis on this, you know, upload of the results electronically?
You know the interesting thing that if, for instance, you have, let's just use it as an example now. If you have 20 polling units in the ward, you know, from polling unit to the ward and the local government and the state, if you have 20 polling units in the ward, and after election, the political party have this result of the 20 polling units result already, that is already published, because that will be announced at the polling unit. And by the time you put them together, you stay in your place and put them together and you get a certain result. And then when you get to the World Collation Center, the result is different. Of course, people will start asking questions. Because the essence of that electronic transmission, that as the result is being announced at the polling unit, is sent to the collation center electronically so that nobody tampers with it. So, but when you have discrepancy, if a polling unit result was recorded 500, and at the collation center you are seeing 200 and something, you know, people will be very, very agitated. So otherwise, if you do even the manual collation and it tallies with the initial result, nobody will protest. So, but when there is this discrepancy, and the law has said, one of the discrepancy is the BVAS that should take supremacy. So, of course, you can collect manually in tandem with the electronic transmission. But when there's a manifest discrepancy, people will shout power.
Okay, but let's also talk about the places where violence had erupted. I mean, there are several reports of persons who went out to cast their votes and couldn't cast their vote because election process or the electoral process was disrupted. I mean, there are also reports in some states, especially Imo State, Anambra State, where elections didn't happen, actually. Also in other parts of the country, elections didn't happen. What does the Constitution or the Electoral Act says about disruption of the electoral process and places where elections didn't happen? Because INEC, up until this moment, I mean, there's no statement to that.
Well, you recall this last election, some election actually started very late and then it continued very late to the night and some even on Sunday. And just like I came and said that nobody was going to be disenfranchised. I don't know how that went through the whole country. But I am of the view, and this is my conviction, that when there is violence, people should not be disenfranchised. We must find a way to portray that, because some people believe that is another form of rigging, where you go to your opponent's stronghold and cause violence deliberately so that the election will not take place in that So you see at the collation center, I see so many police results were cancelled because they said there was violence. We must have to devise a way to bypass that kind of arrangement and that kind of principle that, okay, once there's violence, you cancel election. Because politicians have mastered the art of going to their opponent's place and cause, in quotes, cause violence, and then there will be election. So even at the collation center, you see all those council results. We put them together. It will significantly influence the result of election. So you know we are evolving democracy, and as an evolving democracy, we want us to be creative. Why would there be violence in a particular polling unit or in some polling unit where we have provided security, we have made budget and all that? So if there is violence, we can reschedule those polling units and elections should be conducted, because when you disenfranchise somebody, it's no longer part of the electoral system. So we must find a way to do that. Otherwise, the result we are getting may not be the true reflection of the decision of the people.
But I mean, I want you to state, you're a legal practitioner, I want you to state the position of the Electoral Act, especially of 2022 as amended, to this effect, that where, you know, violence erupts in different polling units or election process is being truncated and people are disenfranchised or election didn't take place. Well, there are several polling units, especially in most states, and Anambra, we got reports saying election didn't happen in these places. So what exactly you know, does the Electoral Act and the law says?
Well, the Electoral Act is also, there's also the election guidelines by INEC too. And the principle is that when there's violence, because when there's violence, the polling unit result will be cancelled. But when the cancellation of all those polling unit results will significantly influence the outcome of the election results. For instance, in a world that, for instance, let's be practical now. If the council vote is higher than the declared result, of course they will ask for, they will set a date for a fresh election and all that, or a run election in those states. Otherwise, what INEC has been doing over the years is that, okay, this council vote is less than the winning vote. They will allow it to be. But what I'm saying is that I think that is, we have to improve on that, so that people will actually contest. Because when you go to court and ask, okay, the council vote is 10,000, the winner is has 20,000. So even if you add the 10,000, the difference is still not, it don't make any substantial outcome. So they will not let it be. But practically speaking, people will continue to do those violence in those areas they feel that they don't have strength, so that they will cancel this polling unit result. That's the point. And that should be the point of interest of Nigerians to say, okay, how do we go beyond this? And the simple answer is that, look, if there is violence, they will schedule the election to another date and provide more security and conduct the election.
All right. I think you know, the parties themselves also need to be educated on the Electoral Act and to know how to use it. Because you look at some of the arguments, you know, out there at the National Cancellation Center in Abuja, they were not really hitting the nail on the head. But I want to draw your attention to something that the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, said. You know, the likes of Dino Melaye, Emeka Ehedioha, and co, who are party agents at the National Coalition Center. Even some state party agents at the state coalition centers were not allowed to challenge the results and have anything done about it at all. As long as the returning officer said, said these are the results, I've presented it, I stand by them. The coalition officer at that level, be the state or national level, would it's okay, accepted. So we saw that even in the national level, when the various scopes said, oh, this is the result, I stand by it, the national chairman, of INEC accepted it. At what point can the party agents challenge the results and call for some sort of intervention from INEC? Bearing in mind the fact that INEC chairman said where the likes of Dino and co were making their complaint, that was not the level to make that, and he summarily dismissed it. I would like to draw your attention to, and I know you know this already, section 64 sub 6, subsection 6 of the Electoral Act. I'll just read it a bit for benefit of our listeners, viewers rather. It says, where during the collation of results there is a dispute regarding a collated result, where during the collation of results there is a dispute regarding a collated result or the result of an election from any polling unit, the collation officer or returning officer shall use the following to determine the correctness of the disputed result. A, the original of the disputed collated result for each polling unit where the election is disputed. B, the smart card reader or other technology device used for accreditation of voters in each polling unit where the election is disputed for the purpose of obtaining accreditation data directly from the smart card reader. And C says data of accreditation recorded and transmitted directly from the polling units where the election is disputed. D said the votes and results of each election recorded and transmitted directly from each polling unit. So at what point is this dispute resolution mechanism as contained in section 64 subsection 6 A, B, C, and D, at what point is it supposed to be activated? Is it at the polling unit level? From what you've heard me read now, is it at the local government, the ward level, is it at local government coalition level, or the national level, or is it limited to any of these levels?
Well, the practical reality is that you should monitor your election at the polling unit level. And you should make that process, because that is the baseline. It's the polling unit result that you aggregate to give you the final result. So your process should be at the polling unit result and get it right at that stage. Of course, after the polling unit result, the next place is the ward collation center, where you have to get all the results from the polling unit to give you that baseline, and that's where you should process actually. Well, that's where the process, the collation center, the polling unit, the ward collation center and the local government, that's where the process should be more meaningful. Now, remember the Uzodinma case, the Supreme Court decision, that added all the so-called council votes, and now made the man the governor, and people now call him Supreme Court governor. Now, why was that so? Most of the results were cancelled by INEC, and the court said, no, you cannot do that. You don't have the power to cancel any declared results. And the court added all the council results. A lot of Nigerians don't see that as a judgment that they should be proud of. But they will always say that INEC does not have the power, once the result is declared, for them to cancel that, to cancel such results. No, so the practical reality is that you should monitor and protest results at the polling unit and at the ward collation center. That is where you can actually put them together. Because once you leave the polling unit, it goes to the ward. That is where political parties should protest. Look, result from polling unit A, B, C, D. This is the result. You cannot give us this result. So, but if you allow it to go as it is collated and it moves on there, then it becomes practically impossible for INEC chairman or otherwise to tamper with such results.
No, but does this subsection details? Does it mention which level? Does it mention which level?
All these sections are subject to interpretation by the court. That's one thing we have to do. Apart from the fact that you can see sections of law that are very clear, the court might interpret it in a way that even those of us that are practitioners will look at it like, is this the interpretation by the court?
Yeah, but, but,
So,
but, but, but Leonard, is that not where we get it wrong? Because we always see a law in black and white and we'll always say, oh, subject to interpretation by the court, and the court will bring something totally different that is wrong. We see what happened in Osun
of course,
State.
that's right.
The law is clear
That's
that
right.
if there is a discrepancy, law is clear if there's a discrepancy or there's overvoting, that they have to declare, they have to cancel the election and run it again. And the Supreme Court now said, no, we're going to count it and we allocate votes and declare winner, which is against black and white. So why don't you guys call it as it is? Because you say interpretation. They interpret it wrongly. And we all go home and say, well, the court has spoken. That is injustice. That's injustice.
I am basically of the school of thought, of jurisprudence in law that says, look, let us forget about most times technicality and give judgment or interpret law the way it is, not looking at what it takes to achieve. That's of course, I'm in that school of thought that it's high time we've got to do away with technical interpretation of law. The laws are very clear, and let us give it that literal meaning. But I'm not in the bench. Most times it's the judges that come out with judgment that sometimes we don't know how to explain it sometimes. But that is the law of Nigeria.
Okay.
Now, if you look at it, let us go into international a bit, because that is my place. Now, if you see the way elections are conducted, even in Kenya here and Gambia, you see that all these election results are reviewed immediately. It doesn't take so much time for us to review election. We have just finished election. We'll call on the court to look at what has happened. Can this election stand? But of course, our judicial system is so slow, despite the fact that the election matters are even given accelerated hearing. But if you look at even what happened in Kenya after the election, it took less than 5 days for the Supreme Court to come and look. This election is not in tandem, cancel it and reconduct it. That what happened in Kenya. So if the people are protesting and say, look at it, that's why I said we expect in the next 7 days. It's almost maybe 3 days left now. So come out and explain to Nigerians what actually happened. These results that were collated, were they electronically transmitted? Why did you have to do manual transmission of results when the law says you should do electronically transmitted results? So it does tension where there is a clarity and explanation to the people. So, but when you leave everybody in the dark, everybody will be agitated. So there must have to be some explanation to Nigerians to understand it. But then, once you are dissatisfied, you just have to go to court, the election tribunal, to ventilate your anger.
No, but so the question now would be, you say that the next 7 days we're left with 2 days. I mean, should the review process start when the results were still being collated, when we're still at the collation center? At what point should the review start? Because it was just yesterday.
The review is after the announcement of the result.
Okay, so
you can review the result 7 days after.
Okay, but quickly, let's look at some of the comment. The president had put out his thoughts, not the president-elect, but President Muhammadu Buhari. And part of his comment, he said, I know some politicians and candidates may not agree with this view. That too is fine. If any candidate believes they can prove the fraud they claim is committed against them, then bring forward the evidence. So I'm asking, do you think that this fraud that has been alleged by different quarters, I mean, you have the observers, different observing groups, you have Yega Africa, you have international observers, you also have Nigerians, you have political parties. It feels like almost everybody is saying one and the same thing, the irregularities, all of the things that had happened in the election. Do you think they can prove the evidence?
Of course, we should be worried that all the civil society group and election observers and some Nigerians are not happy with the outcome of the collation. Not necessarily the election result, but how the elections results were collated manually. I think that is the main grasp with the election. But if the election results that were able to transmit electronically, and we are seeing it, and then there was collation, nobody will be will be that angry. Now, the question is that, or the accusation against INEC is that you did manual collation as against electronic collation. And that's why they say there's disparity from the polling unit result to that was eventually collated. And we should be worried because the international observers have seen some of their reports and say, look, this election was not transparent. So the legitimacy of any person that they mention it will be questioned from time. But then I think I want to give it to the president-elect that says, okay, look, I know you are angry, but you can come to the table. Let us see how we can save the country. I don't know what that means. Maybe what that means is that, okay, those of you that have lost, come, let us form a government. Maybe that's what it means. Or I'll carry you along. That's another political angle to it. Because some people say politicians, you do not trust them because sometimes as we're even angry, they will call them and they will settle behind the scene. This is off record now. So that is another aspect of seeing that this election is settled politically. So we don't know how that pans out. But my fear, my agitation is that for the international observers, for the civil society group, to say that this election actually does not reflect the will of the people. Look, if you look at how the election went, you now know that Nigerians have become very sophisticated. The winner of the election, the president-elect, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, just stressed it. I think with 12 states, even the P2B, it's stressed because 11 states was FCC, everything is just like it is. So 12 states. So it shows that we need a lot of work politically to unite Nigerians. And that's why the process has to be very transparent because we cannot afford another audio of violence. So that's why I expect INEC in the next 2 or 3 days to come out comprehensively to address Nigerians on how this election was collated and then bring out their review report rather. Otherwise, if they keep quiet and don't do anything, I mean, it's not going to be a good president. So okay. We expect INEC, and that is the point I'm saying, that we expect INEC to come out and address Nigeria on their review report based on all these allegations that have been made.
All right, Leonard, I would want to say that INEC, I don't know if you agree with this. I'm taking you back, and I'm sorry that the INEC chairman he even gave a testimony at that master collation that even can be used against him in a court of law. He said there are 4 levels of collation. And the law says that the collation officer, if there's any result in dispute, under subsection 6 of section 6, will have to do a recount. In subsection 7 of section 6, it still says if the disputed result under subsection 6 is found not to be correct, the collation officer or returning officer shall re-collate and announce a new result. And the INEC chairman is he not a collation officer? He is a national collation officer or national returning officer. And this thing it mentions both collation officer, and it does not specify the level of collation. Subsection 8 says, where the dispute under subsection 6 arose at the level of collation and the returning officer has satisfied the provision of subsection 6A to D, which is what we read earlier, the returning officer shall accordingly declare the winner of the election. And the winner of the presidential election is declared by the national returning officer, who is the INEC chairman. We're not talking about House of Representatives, that's federal constituency, or senatorial elections, which has nothing to do with Amu Yakubu. We're talking about presidential election. He is the returning officer. He said before he declares the winner, he must fulfill the requirements if there's a dispute of subsection 6A to D and 7. So, I mean, should we be, is there any ambiguity about the level of collation at which the disputes arising should be addressed? I think no, sir. I think no. But I would like to draw your attention to the fact that, and I don't know, you might want to share your thoughts on this, but also the fact that in an election where Nigerians are said to be the highest number of voters in the history of the country registered, okay, more than 93 million voters. And you have about 30-something million voters of them, voters being young people. And you have the highest number of newly registered voters in the last continuous voters registration. They are telling us that we have the lowest turnout in the history of this republic from 1999 till now, by way of percentages. And if you look at also now, by way of numbers, whereas we had 31 million voters in the last election, to 29 million voters in last election, now they're telling us in this year's election we're having 25. Now, does it align? Does it add up to you? So please address the two issues before we say goodbye. I mean,
I agree with you totally that they lost the 93 million voters in the register. Sometimes it's very questionable to me because you know that, okay, naturally some of those voters have passed on, they are those refugees. Of course, some people, they have been double registration and all that. But then we also remember that in those days, states like Borno and Katsina used to bring millions of votes when there was no beavers. Now, beavers will authenticate the card, the voter card before you are able to vote. If you fail to do that, you won't be able to vote. Now, that could be another factor responsible. Another one that people are alleging that there was voter suppression, that where a particular party got total number of votes, it was deliberately reduced at the collation center. That will also reduce the number of the total outcome of the voters. Those are all allegations. Now, also remember, just like you rightly said, the INEC chairman is the returning officer for presidential election. He's also the chief collation officer. But the INEC chairman is not at the polling unit, he's not at the ward collation center, and the local government and the state. So what he does is that he gets results from the state returning officer. Then he now collates the results. That is the point that you see the political parties were protesting. That the results from the state were manually collated, and that as a chief returning officer, he should reject that, he should question it. But if you look at it critically, he was not there at the state. For instance, they disputed results from River State. You know, he wasn't the one that collated the results. But the final collation at the collation center was the one he got from the returning officer. And that's why we ask questions, were there cancellation, what's the issue, and all that. So I know what people expect. Now at that point, if the returning officer, who is the INEC chairman, satisfies himself that, look, the result from a particular state has been tinted with a lot of irregularities. As a returning officer, I say, no, I don't want to take this. But INEC chairman will say, no, he doesn't have such power, morally speaking. But people expect that as a returning officer, if they have been protested about a particular state, and you satisfy yourself that this result is not in tandem with the law, he should be able to reject such results at the collation level before he collects it. But in the history of Nigerian elections, if you go back to 1999 to this, there's no INEC chairman that has rejected any state result.
All right, we need to end now.
We always accept it.
Leonard, we need to end now, but just as, you know, we have ended already. Your thoughts, I hear you. Sounds like that headline from The Nation. The thing is, at what point, you know, it was stated, we saw a lot of people challenging the chairman of the umpire, saying it is within your capacity. You have the right to, you know, take a certain decision. And the decision of, you know, the officer at the time was that we'll go ahead. We'll go ahead with the process. And that's what the decision was, because we saw people who were confronting the process. There were also reports that people at gunpoint, you know, they had guns to their head telling them, you need to do a certain thing. So at what point should people upload? How can you, at that point where there's no security, where you had a gun to your head, to begin to protest the result? These are some of the things that were raised. Now, but just before that, in just 1 minute, I'd like you to tell us what do you think the implication of this is on our election? I mean, the implication of all of this on our democracy as a country.
I think it's not very good enough for us, for our international image. The transparency that the electoral house and try to bring is not clearly seen, because from the report of the international observers, the local observers, and the civil society organizations, and of course Nigerians that have results of the polling unit, they seem to be in agreement that that is not the true reflection of of the election that was conducted. But then we should understand that there are processes, and the provision is that, look, if you feel aggrieved, you just have to approach the election tribunal so that we don't take the law into our hands. That's the provision of the law. But going forward, I think we can do much better. Some people have asked that INEC chairman and commissioner should not be appointed by Mr. President, should be appointed by a commission, independent commission, so that the issue of allegiance to the incumbent government does not arise, or that kind of allegation does not arise.
All right.
But I think Nigerians can be more active and be more participatory in the process, so that we'll continue to monitor the process and get the best in the next step.
All right, we have to go now. Thank you so much for your thoughts. We do appreciate you, and we look forward to share more of your thoughts as we progress, especially with the electoral issues, the aftermath of this election. That's the size of a conversation. My name is Messi Boko. We join the newsroom at 9 o'clock for the news brief. Have a great morning.
Sorry, Messi. My name is Kofi Bartels. We're running off. See you tomorrow. Good morning.